Pay the support debt or spend the next few months in jail. That was her threat, delivered right there in court, backed up by a completely bogus paternity claim. But I had a plan. With one simple DNA test request and a single phone call, I was about to flip the whole courtroom on its head. "Do you have anything to say, Mr. Carter?" the judge asked me. He sounded more exhausted than angry at that point. "I would like to request a DNA test, Your Honor." My voice was steady. It didn't waver even slightly. There was a beat of silence, not the planned kind, but just enough time for her to let out a little mocking laugh. She clearly thought this was the final act, the grand finale of her legal theater. My lawyer, a characterless little guy who looked fresh out of law school, leaned over and whispered, "They'll allow it. But until it's done, you're going into pretrial detention." I just nodded. My agreement wasn't necessary because my mind was already several steps ahead. Look, this isn't a story about heartbreak. It's not even really about justice. It's about securing the ultimate advantage. The bailiff cuffed me. My ex couldn't hide her smirk, exposing that composite filling I'd paid for 5 years ago. "You always wanted to be the martyr," she hissed as she walked past. "Now you actually get to wear the handcuffs to prove it." That was the moment I finally made eye contact with her, just a quick glance, but enough to see her smile falter. Most people crumble when they're let out in chains in front of a packed room of strangers, with no one stepping in to stop it. But I've learned that silence holds a terrifying power. She mistook my calm for defeat. She thought she'd won the final joke. If you're listening to this, you need to understand that this kind of betrayal happens to more people than you realize. Good men who did everything right still find themselves in shackles, while someone else celebrates their downfall. If that resonates with you, or if you've even come close to that kind of betrayal, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. It really helps our team keep telling these necessary stories that are usually ignored. So, back to that holding cell. I sat there for 8 hours. The metal bench eventually made my legs completely numb, and I stared at a small scratch on the wall that read, "The truth hurts." There are no clocks in holding, but time feels different when you know you are not guilty. The guard eventually brought me a sandwich. Bologna on dry, sad bread, without mustard. It was hard to tell if it was meant to be punishment or just typical institutional apathy. Then I asked for my phone call. He looked surprised. Maybe he expected me to call a sobbing mother or a high-priced lawyer. Instead, I asked for the number of the state attorney general's office. "Repeat that," he demanded. I repeated it. My voice was calm, unnervingly cold. Then I asked for a very specific person, Morinker. He arched an eyebrow. "The one from that massive fraud case last year." I just nodded. He picked up the phone and reluctantly handed it over. That's how the plan truly began. I may have looked like a man drowning, but I was actually dragging her down with me into the deep end. She believed that sending me to jail ended the game. She was wrong. We weren't even at halftime. I didn't bother calling my brother. I didn't call my cousin. I didn't even call my ex-cellmate who still owed me a favor from 2009. I called the Family Law Fraud Investigation Office, Extension 3. When the operator answered, sounding cheerful and completely unaware that I was holding a jail phone to my face, one hand still cuffed to a metal bench, I asked for Morinker Decker. She wasn't just any prosecutor. In legal circles, she was known as the Velvet Guillotine because her case summaries were essentially autopsy reports for reputations. You don't call Morinker unless you've got serious blood on your hands, or someone else's fingerprints are all over your life. The operator paused for a second before saying, "One moment, please." A click, and then another voice. It was a young woman, maybe an assistant or a paralegal. She was professional and polite, with a subtle southern drawl. She sounded like the type who'd walk her dog and dismantle your airtight alibi before noon. "I understand you're calling from the county. Are you the defendant?" "Temporarily," I replied, "but not for much longer." I laid out the facts for her, keeping my tone measured, completely devoid of any drama or complaints. I detailed the exact claim she had filed, that I was the biological father of a child born 5 years after our marriage ended. A woman, by the way, who had actually Googled, "What does child support cover if I remarry?" I mentioned the conflicting income statements in her filing versus her W-2s for the last 3 years, the first paternity test that vanished 2 years ago, and the fact that she had sole custody of a child whose birth certificate still listed father unknown. Then, I delivered the final piece of information. "I've done this before." That was all I needed to say. There was a noticeable silence, just long enough for me to hear her start typing again. "Can you verify your full legal name and the case number again?" she asked. I did. Then, "Mr. Carter, we will be in touch shortly. Please inform the intake officer that we will be sending a request for documentation before the end of the day." Click. No friendly sign-off, no good luck, just the crisp, professional execution of the first strategic maneuver. And by the way, if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now to the rest of the story. By the time the sad sandwich cart came around again, my file was sitting on Morinker's desk. This is the thing about jail. It's loud, It smells like bleach and regret, but when you're truly in it, you begin to see who operates outside the noise. You spot the patterns. You learn who's on the take, who's taking the fall for others, and who is exactly where they are supposed to be. And you quickly realize how few people actually fight back with any real strategy. My ex thought she was brilliant. She thought family court was all about tears, sympathy, and signatures, and that once I was in a jumpsuit, I'd be too disgraced to fight. She never considered that I had been studying the system for years, not just her lies, but the machinery that let her get away with them. My goal wasn't just to be proven right. I was determined to dismantle her entire modus operandi. The next morning, they moved me to a different cell. They claimed it was overcrowding. I figured the paperwork must be starting to land. I didn't bother to ask. Let them wonder. On the second day, I got a visitor. It wasn't Morinker. She avoids handshakes through plexiglass. But it was someone in a sharp blazer who asked extremely precise questions. How long had she been filing for support? Had I ever signed an acknowledgement of paternity? Had I received any notice from the Child Support Services Division before her lawsuit? When I said no, the woman's pen froze mid-sentence. She then moved to a second, tabbed folder. Has she used this tactic before? She murmured, mostly to herself. More than once, I stated. She didn't respond directly, only saying, "We're going to escalate the matter." That night, back in the cell, I lay on the cot, hands clasped behind my head, watching the flickering fluorescent light. She wanted me jailed and humiliated. She never imagined that I would use those very bars as leverage and turn the entire situation against her. Morinker never forgets a name. Not the ones she convicts, not the ones who evade justice, and especially not the ones who laugh at the system and walk away smiling. 3 years prior, an anonymous complaint had landed on her desk. A man alleged his ex-wife had used fraudulent paternity claims, lied on income statements, and routinely used the family court as a weapon. He was without a lawyer and had little concrete evidence, just a handful of poorly redacted forms and a burning rage. The complaint went nowhere due to insufficient evidence and jurisdictional issues. Morinker hadn't forgotten it. She simply couldn't act on it yet. The woman's name was the exact same one now staring up in bold from the top of the file on her conference table. But this time, the man had brought the ammunition, a negative DNA test, a history of false claims, contradictory income statements, and, the absolute clincher, the fact that he had actually been wrongly incarcerated by the court, even briefly. Now, Morinker had proof, not just a theory. She leaned back in her leather chair, tapping the tabletop with a fingernail. "Run the name again," she instructed. "All counties. Civil and family court filings only. Flag anything with disputed paternity or spousal support issues." Her assistant needed less than 2 minutes. 3 distinct cases, 3 different men, all filed within a 6-year window. 1 was disputed, 2 were granted by default. 1 man left the state after his wages were garnished. Another tried to appeal and failed because he missed a minor deadline. The third just gave up because the child, he admitted, looked a little like him. It was all there, buried deep under layers of administrative apathy. Morinker shut her laptop and pivoted to the whiteboard behind her. She started writing. Subject: name redacted. Primary tactic: late filing/income manipulation. Key weapon: custody-based leverage plus threat of jail time. Target demographic: middle-aged men. No criminal record. She labeled the woman a paperwork predator. And Morinker had a particular contempt for predators who wore expensive perfume. She meticulously went through the affidavit, highlighting timestamps that didn't align with the income. In one instance, the ex-wife claimed she was unemployed while simultaneously declaring income through a shell company under her maiden name. That shell company had only one client, a man with the same last name as one of the previous fathers. That was no accident. It was a clear pattern. You know what's more useful than a motive? Morinker asked the empty room. A motive with a paper trail. The next document was the real treasure, an old 2019 joint tax return where the listed dependent child was born the following year. She circled it 3 times. "This is enough for a felony fraud charge on its own," she murmured. But this wasn't just about filing charges. Morinker didn't simply want to win the case. She wanted to use it to establish a powerful precedent, to make her face the last thing other predators saw before they ever used a child as a weapon in a courtroom again. A phone rang. It was her lead investigator. "We've been tracking her digital footprint. You're going to want to see this." Within the hour, Morinker had screenshots of social media activity that directly contradicted her sworn testimony. Vacation photos taken during her supposed unemployment. Pictures of the child calling another man daddy months before she ever filed the support claim against me. In one comment thread, which she had since deleted, she joked about knowing exactly how to win custody before she even filed the paperwork. People like her always boast right before they fall. By noon, Morinker had a preliminary case outline spanning 12 points, fully supported by sources and cross-references. By 3 p.m., Her office had drafted the initial subpoena requests. By 5 o'clock, they were filed. This was no longer a minor civil infraction. This was a massive criminal investigation. Morinker stood by her window, looking out over the city. She wasn't smiling. She was focused, because this wasn't about justice as a feel-good concept. This was a meticulously planned haunt. They barked my name as if they'd made a mistake. "Carter, grab your things. You're being released." No explanation was given. No guard had specific papers. Just the same desk sergeant who hadn't made eye contact with me since the booking slammed a clipboard down, acting like I was personally wasting his time. "Innocent people don't usually come through here," he mumbled. Maybe to himself, or maybe to me. It had only been 3 days, but jail ages you in ways you can't see. The silence there isn't silence. It's heavy. It's dense. The food doesn't taste bland. It tastes gray. And the lights never truly go out. They just hum like a constant threat. So when they let me out, the sunlight felt different. It was too sharp, too loud, as if I'd forgotten how real light worked. I squinted, blinking as a junior officer handed me a clear plastic bag containing my possessions, acting like he was doing me a tremendous favor. Inside, my wallet, belt, keys, and a pen. The DNA results had come back with unbelievable speed. Maybe Morinker had put pressure on the lab. Maybe someone owed her a favor. Or maybe, just maybe, the universe decided to be honest for once. The child was not mine. Not 99.9%. Not inconclusive. Not pending further testing. It was zero. No match. No connection. Just a clean, undeniable break between my bloodline and the child she tried to chain to my name. I signed a release form. The clerk didn't even bother to look up. "You can go." That was the extent of it. No apology, no compensation, no, "We're sorry for the wrongful detention." Just a plastic bag, my fingerprint, and the same door I'd walked through days earlier, except this time it swung outward. And standing right there on the other side, arms crossed as if she owned the sidewalk, was Morinker. She wasn't alone. 2 others stood with her, looking like state investigators. One was holding a thick manila folder. The other had an iPad and a posture that discouraged any small talk. Morinker didn't smile. She didn't need to. "Are you clean?" she asked. I held up the release form like a boarding pass. "Certified." She gave a brief nod. "Good. Because now we get to work." This wasn't a hero's welcome. It was an agreement between 2 people who understood precisely what had just happened and what was coming next. "Walk with me," she said, already turning toward the street. I fell into step behind her. As we crossed the courthouse steps, a reporter snapped a picture. I didn't flinch. I wanted the photo to run. I wanted the world to see me walking out, calm, composed, ready. Because unlike her, I wasn't going to sneer or gloat. I wasn't going to yell at a camera or post cryptic social media updates. I had something far more dangerous than ego. I had Morinker. "She's done this before," Morinker stated without looking back. "She's filed in multiple jurisdictions, changed middle names, used mail forwarding to dodge jurisdictional review, and got some clerks to stamp documents they shouldn't have. It's a complete mess." Mess, I thought. That felt like a charitable description. "She'll panic," I said. Morinker nodded. "Good. I want her terrified. It makes the discovery phase easier." We reached the curb and a sleek, black state vehicle pulled up. No visible logos, just tinted windows and perfect timing. "I'll be in touch," she said, opening the door. "Keep your phone on, and if she tries to contact you, record everything." I almost laughed. "She won't." "Maybe not," Morinker conceded, "but she's going to feel your breath on the back of her neck." As the car pulled away, I saw my own reflection in the window. I looked older than I had just 3 days ago, but also sharper, more focused, like someone who had finally shed the last layers of a life that had been quietly suffocating him. She had no idea what was coming. She thought the jail time was the victory, but she never bothered to ask what my next move would be. Morinker, as I knew, never forgets a name. It started with a knock on the door, which she assumed was just another Amazon delivery. She opened it in yoga pants and a t-shirt stained with sarcasm, already preparing to tell the courier to just leave it on the porch. Then she saw the man standing there, badge clipped to his belt. No smile, no clipboard. "Ma'am, name redacted?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. He handed her a thick, red-sealed envelope. "You've been served," he said simply. "Criminal subpoena." She blinked. Criminal, but the door was already closing. She tore the envelope open like it was a truly terrible birthday card. Dozens of pages, legal jargon, exhibits, copies of past filings she'd barely remembered tampering with. She frantically flipped to the back, searching for the usual fine or mediation date. Instead, she saw it, filed by Morinker Decker, Senior Deputy Prosecutor, Office of the Family Law Fraud Enforcement Division. Just like that, her breath hitched. She knew that name. Anyone who abuses the system knows Morinker. She was the one who famously turned a falsified spousal support affidavit into a 6-month sentence. She froze an entire joint business account in under 24 hours with a single motion. This wasn't a warning letter or a civil reprimand. This was a weapon. She immediately called her lawyer. Her third lawyer, that is. The other two had found graceful exits from family law after working with her. He showed up in a borrowed suit with a perpetually sour expression. As he reviewed the documents, his mouth grew tighter and his movements slowed. It alleges perjury, tax fraud, falsified court filings. A pattern of abuse, he mumbled, and child support fraud under aggravated intent statutes. Her laugh was forced and sharp. Come on, every woman exaggerates things in court. It's practically a tradition. He did not laugh. Instead, he held up a page. You claim here to be unemployed, he said. And yet, you are photographed right here, by a pool in Boise, during the very same month. There's a timestamp. She rolled her eyes. That's hardly enough for a case. He flipped to another exhibit. Here you stated he was the father. But you also signed a pre-paternity test waiver for another man. So what does that mean? She snapped. It means, he said, his voice quiet, that they are painting you as a serial manipulator of the judicial system, and frankly, it's a compelling picture. Her voice cracked. Then we go to family court. We fix it. It's not the end of the world. He hesitated. No, he finally said. We are not going to family court. He turned the page. The judge is not local. This is a state superior court appointment. That means they've officially classified this as multi-jurisdictional criminal fraud, perjury, and malicious prosecution. Her hands went instantly cold. That's impossible, she whispered. This was just a family matter. It's about money, about child support. He looked her straight in the eye. It's not about that anymore. It's about your freedom. She leaped up, pacing frantically. We can settle. We'll settle. Offer them money, restitution, whatever they want. You don't offer restitution when the prosecutor is trying to make a statement, he cut in. Morinker Decker isn't just trying to win a case. She's trying to create a lasting example. That night, she poured herself 3 fingers of wine and frantically scrolled through her social media feed, deleting posts in a haze before sheer panic made her hands stop. She deleted pictures, she removed captions. It was too late. Morinker's team had already downloaded everything. Just 3 weeks earlier, she'd posted a courthouse selfie with the caption, "Making him pay." #crown #single mom moves, featuring a smug smile and a coffee cup from her new luxury SUV. Now, that exact post was the first piece of evidence, labeled, "Demonstration of intent to deceive / public admission of strategic filing." The subpoenas landed with force. They demanded bank records, text messages, employment histories. Even her sister was called to testify. One by one, her carefully constructed lies were converted into geographical coordinates, and Morinker wasn't chasing her. She was precisely mapping her every move. This had moved beyond simply getting the support money back. This was about showing the entire system what happens when a person uses a child as a legal pawn and gets caught. She was still trying to laugh it off, still clinging to the belief that a fine, a quick settlement, or even a well-timed tear in court could save her. But the terrifying truth hadn't sunk in yet. The case was no longer hers to control. It belonged entirely to Morinker. The first call was to a woman named Kelsey, her old college roommate, brunch partner, and her daughter's godmother. The investigator didn't have to press hard. He just asked if she could verify a few dates and cross-check a couple of names. Kelsey's voice broke before he finished the second question. "I thought I already told the court all this," she stammered. "Wait, are you saying she lied?" The silence on the other end gave the only answer needed. Within days, more calls followed. A guy named Dion, an ex-boyfriend from 6 years ago, received a formal request for a recorded interview. The day the subpoena arrived, he posted a vague status on Facebook about people dragging your name through the courts when all you tried to do was help raise their kid. The comments section filled up with speculation, but the real damage was what he said in that cold state interview room. "She told me I was probably the father, but that it didn't matter because someone else had better financial prospects." His own words, not mine. When asked if he had ever signed legal acknowledgments, he looked genuinely stunned. "No, I didn't even know she filed anything." "Wait, she used my kid in a court case?" Yes, she did." Then came the quiet betrayal she never saw coming. Her own sister. This was the woman who had stood by her through 2 breakups, helped her move 3 times, and co-hosted her baby shower. She testified under oath, calm and deliberate. "I told her to come clean before it blew up. I told her it would catch up to her eventually. She always said the court would believe her because she was the mother." The words landed like a heavy gavel because the courtroom was no longer her safety net. It was now her trap. Next came casually devastating emails. Screenshots recovered from old email archives. Jokes about securing the bag, and how it's not fraud if they never ask questions. Group chat logs were subpoenaed. Voicemails were pulled from cloud backups. In one audio clip, her unmistakable voice was heard saying, He's not the father, but I need him to think he is, at least until the court finalizes the support order. After that, who cares? Morinker didn't need one single smoking gun. She now had a full armory. The state's case file ballooned from 28 to 61 pages in less than a week. Every witness was either cooperating voluntarily or under threat of contempt. Even her hairdresser, yes, her hairdresser, provided a notarized statement. Apparently, during an appointment, she had boasted about how to manipulate the system while getting her roots touched up. Her inner circle was gone, her alliances dissolved. Her phone glowed with silence. No one returned her calls, and the raw panic began to etch itself into her voice. She called her lawyer again. We need to stop this. We absolutely have to settle. But by then, the opportunity had passed. This wasn't a game of who had the upper hand anymore. It was a countdown clock, and every tick exposed a name, a signature, a voicemail, a fleeting moment of malice she thought was buried in the daily cruelty of manipulation. But everything leaves a trace. Every friend she had used, ignored, or burned was now appearing on the prosecution's timeline, not with sympathy, but with hard evidence. The difference between a secret and evidence is just a court subpoena, and Morinker had plenty more of those. It started as a whisper. A court stenographer shared a snippet with a freelance journalist who specialized in courthouse drama. By the time the hearing began, 3 reporters were in the gallery, all pretending to be neutral spectators. But when the assistant prosecutor submitted the evidence, dozens of pages detailing fabricated paternity claims, multiple victims across state lines, doctored tax returns, and the audio recording labeled intent to defraud, the newsrooms smelled blood. Morinker knew exactly what she was doing. That afternoon, the local headline exploded across digital feeds. Woman accused of systemic fraud in family courts. State prosecutor seeks maximum penalty. Within hours, the story went regional. By the next morning, it was national, not just for the charges, which happen often, but for the photo. Someone had captured her during the initial arraignment. A woman in an expensive blouse and oversized sunglasses, smirking as if the charges were beneath her. It was the kind of arrogant smile the public loves to hate. It became a meme in less than 36 hours. When you ruin a man's life before lunch. Wine glass, nail polish. Catch flights, not felonies. The hashtags were cruel, and it went viral for all the wrong reasons. By the second hearing, the courtroom was jammed. Not just lawyers and press, but complete strangers. A line snaked down the hallway, and security had to clear people from the staircase. Inside, she sat alone. Her lawyer was visibly sweating beside her, the smug look completely erased from her face. Her makeup was subtler now, as if she was trying to blend in. Too late. Morinker entered with a binder that was thicker than the entire defense file. When the judge asked if the state was ready, Morinker stood and addressed the room as if it were an auditorium. Your Honor, the defendant did not merely make an error. She systematically weaponized the judicial system, used a child as her pawn, falsified financial records, and attempted to have an innocent man incarcerated while possessing full knowledge that he was not the biological father. A low murmur rippled through the gallery. Morinker continued, this was never about child support. This was about control, about intentionally manipulating legal structures to prey on emotionally vulnerable men. She didn't just break the law, she openly ridiculed it. The crowd gasped when Morinker introduced the transcript of the voicemail as evidence. He's not the father, but I need him to think he is, at least until the court finalizes the support order. The judge raised an eyebrow. The defense didn't dare to object. Then came the list of previous victims. 3 of them sat in the back row, arms crossed, their expressions impossible to read. As Morinker read their names, each man nodded, as if they had waited for this moment longer than they cared to admit. The presentation was clinical, cold, and utterly devastating. When she finished, the judge turned to the defense. Does the defendant wish to respond? She stood up, her eyes wide. The defiance was gone. The tears were real. I was just trying to survive, she whispered. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Morinker stepped forward again, cool as ice. Intent is not measured by apologies, she stated. It is measured by actions. And your actions were deliberate, coordinated, and severely harmful. The gallery was completely silent, punctuated only by the clicking of cameras. Because in that single moment, her life wasn't just collapsing, it was being permanently documented. Her lawyer leaned in, urgently whispering about plea deals and mitigation strategies. She didn't hear him. She was scanning the audience. One woman pointed at her and murmured something to her companion. They both laughed. This wasn't mere humiliation. This was utter collapse, and the sentence hadn't even been handed down yet. Her lawyer's voice crackled over the phone later, not from emotion. He had none left for her, but from sheer exhaustion. They are going to bury you, he said, utterly blunt. Unless we settle right now. She was sitting in her sister's guest room, scrolling through old photos on her phone, the ones where her life looked perfect and powerful. Vacations, cocktails, spa days, with captions like, self-care because court battles are expensive. They had aged poorly, turning sour. How bad is the settlement? She asked, already knowing it wouldn't be a settlement in any real sense of the word. Her lawyer paused. Full restitution. She scoffed. Of course. How much? He didn't hesitate. Everything. Every dollar ever paid under those false claims. Retroactive. Interest included. And what else? She snapped. A public confession. Signed, filed, and read aloud in open court. The silence that followed hummed like a live wire. He wants me to grovel. He offered no response. He wants it on the record. When she didn't answer, he continued in his flattest voice. You'll lose your car, your savings, the apartment. The state is filing a lien on Monday. Even your retirement funds are on the table. That is illegal, she hissed. No, he corrected. It's restitution, and it's perfectly legal when it follows a plea for felony fraud. She was pacing barefoot, her once immaculate French manicured nails chipped and forgotten. This is extortion. No, he repeated, firm. This is mercy. Morinker had delivered her final offer, and it was non-negotiable. The following week, they met in a sterile, fourth-floor conference room at the courthouse. The windows were sealed shut, and the air conditioning was noticeably too cold. She signed the confession without reading it. She didn't need to. The most devastating clause wasn't even financial. Effective immediately, Ms. Name redacted, is prohibited from initiating or participating in any family court filing within the state of redacted, without prior written approval from the State Family Oversight Board. In plain language, her power had been permanently revoked. No more dragging people into custody hearings to win a breakup. No more leveraging support threats for financial gain. No more playing the struggling single mother while buying new handbags with someone else's money. She was now legally radioactive. A public cautionary tale. The news broke that afternoon. Breaking. Woman at center of viral family court fraud case accepts settlement. Assets seized. Lifetime filing restrictions imposed. The press wasn't chasing her anymore because they didn't have to. The court documents were public. Her signed confession read like a movie script, and the blogs turned it into instant clickbait. I knowingly deceived the court. I used the legal system for emotional retaliation. I acknowledged that the child in question was not biologically related to the defendant. Every line peeled away another layer of her old persona. When the repo man took her car, she stood on her front lawn, arms crossed, pretending not to care, but her neighbors were watching. When the bank froze her checking account, she argued loudly with the teller, but no one offered to help. When her name was added to the oversight registry, it triggered alerts in every local legal database. She wasn't just punished, she was permanently marked. And Morinker never had to raise her voice once.